The security alarm screamed through the Henderson family kitchen at exactly 7 in the morning. Jake Henderson dropped his coffee mug as 3 armed soldiers burst through the front door, weapons raised, shouting commands in overlapping voices. His mother Karen stood frozen at the stove, spatula still in hand, eggs burning behind her. "Jake Henderson, step away from the window," the lead soldier barked. "We have a situation." Jake raised his hands slowly, his mind racing. He was 24 years old, worked as a translator for the Global Defense Initiative, and had absolutely no idea why military personnel were invading his childhood home during breakfast. His mother finally found her voice. "What in God's name is happening in my house?" The soldier ignored her, keeping his rifle trained on Jake. "Sir, there's an alien vessel in orbit. The occupant is demanding to speak with you specifically. She's threatening to destroy communication satellites if we don't comply within the hour." Jake felt his stomach drop. An alien wanted him? That made no sense. He translated documents, not first contact protocols. He'd never even been in the same room as an extraterrestrial. "There must be some mistake," Jake said. "I'm nobody. I shuffle paperwork." "No mistake," the soldier replied. "She knows your name, your address, your employment history. She's been broadcasting your personal information across every frequency we monitor. The brass wants you at Central Command immediately." Karen stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "My son isn't going anywhere until someone explains what's happening. And put those guns down. This is my kitchen." The soldier hesitated, then lowered his weapon slightly. "Ma'am, we don't have time for explanations. The alien's deadline is approaching, and she's made it clear she'll start destroying infrastructure if her demands aren't met." "What demands?" Jake asked. "She wants to meet you face to face. She says it's a matter of critical importance regarding genetic compatibility and species survival." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "Genetic compatibility?" she repeated, her voice rising. "Are you telling me some alien is threatening Earth because she wants to breed with my son?" The soldier's expression remained neutral. "Those were not the exact words used, ma'am, but the translation software is interpreting her intentions as reproductive in nature." "No." Jake felt heat rising in his cheeks. This couldn't be happening. This was insane. He'd spent 3 years translating routine diplomatic exchanges between Earth and the Confederation of Outer Worlds. He'd never done anything that would attract this kind of attention. "There has to be a translation error," Jake insisted. "The alien languages are complex. Context gets lost. Maybe she's talking about cultural exchange or knowledge sharing. Our best linguists have reviewed the transmissions," the soldier said. "The alien is from a species called the Realm. They're known for being extremely precise in their communication. There's no ambiguity in her message. She wants you specifically, and she's willing to commit acts of war to get a meeting." Karen grabbed Jake's arm. "You're not going. I don't care if she blows up every satellite in the sky. My son is not meeting some alien who wants to use him for breeding experiments." "Mom, please," Jake said, trying to keep his voice calm despite the panic flooding his system. "If I don't go, people could die. She's threatening infrastructure. That means hospitals, power grids, emergency services. I have to at least find out what's going on." "Then I'm coming with you," Karen declared. The soldier shook his head. "That's not possible, ma'am. This is a military operation." "My son is not military personnel," Karen shot back. "If you're dragging him into this, I'm going too. Try to stop me and see what happens." The soldier touched his earpiece, listening to something Jake couldn't hear. After a moment, he nodded. "Command says, you can come. But we leave now." 20 minutes later, Jake sat in the back of an armored transport vehicle, his mother beside him, as they raced toward Central Command. The city streets were eerily empty. Someone had ordered an evacuation of the downtown area. "This is insane," Karen muttered. "Absolutely insane." Jake couldn't disagree. He stared at his hands, trying to understand how his boring translator job had led to this moment. He'd worked on dozens of alien communications. He'd never met any of them in person. He preferred it that way. Languages were safe. Documents didn't threaten to start wars. The transport vehicle pulled into an underground facility. Armed guards lined the corridors as Jake and Karen were rushed through security checkpoints. Everyone they passed wore expressions of barely controlled panic. They entered a command center filled with monitors and personnel shouting into headsets. A tall woman with iron-gray hair approached them. She wore a general's uniform and looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Jake Henderson," she said. "I'm General Patricia Morrison. We have a serious problem." "So, I've heard," Jake replied. Morrison gestured to a large monitor. On the screen, an alien face stared back at them. She was humanoid, but distinctly foreign. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality, shifting between blue and violet. Her eyes were larger than human eyes, with vertical pupils. Her features were delicate, but sharp. "This is Kira, of the Realm delegation," Morrison said. "She arrived in orbit 6 hours ago. She bypassed all our security protocols and hacked into our communication systems. She knows things about you that should be classified." "What things?" Jake asked. Morrison pulled up a file on a side monitor. "Your genetic profile. Your medical history. Your family lineage going back 4 generations. She has information that should be impossible for her to access." Karen grabbed Jake's arm again. "How did she get that information?" "We don't know," Morrison admitted. "But she's made her intentions clear. She wants Jake to agree to what she calls a breeding partnership. She claims it's essential for the survival of her species." "That's ridiculous," Jake said. "Humans and Vreln can't be genetically compatible. We're not even from the same evolutionary tree." "That's what our scientists said," Morrison replied. "But Kira insists otherwise. She says her species has been studying humanity for generations. She claims Jake's specific genetic markers are uniquely compatible with Vreln biology." "Why Jake?" Karen demanded. "There are billions of humans. Why is she fixated on my son?" Morrison pulled up another file. "We've been investigating that. Jake, do you remember translating a document 3 months ago? It was a Vreln cultural exchange proposal." "Jake?" Morrison pulled up another file. "Jake doesn't in 44. Jake thought back. He translated hundreds of documents. "Maybe? I'd have to see the file." Morrison handed him a tablet. Jake scanned the document, and his blood ran cold. He remembered this one. It had been unusual. The Vreln had been asking about human courtship rituals, marriage customs, and family structures. Jake had added extensive footnotes, explaining the cultural context. "I remember this," Jake said slowly. "But it was just academic research." "Apparently not," Morrison said. "We believe Kira read your footnotes, your explanations of human culture, and somehow, she decided you were the ideal candidate for her purpose." The main monitor flickered, and Kira's face filled the screen. When she spoke, her voice came through the speakers with an artificial quality, processed through translation software. "Jake Henderson," she said. "I have been patient. My time is ending. You will agree to meet with me, or I will take action against your world." Karen stepped in front of the monitor. "You leave my son alone. He's not interested in whatever you're proposing." Kira's large eyes focused on Karen. "You are the mother. I understand human family bonds. I do not wish to cause distress. But this matter is beyond personal preference. My species faces extinction. Jake Henderson possesses genetic traits that can save my people. I require his cooperation." "Find someone else," Karen said firmly. "There is no one else," Kira replied. "I have searched your entire planet. Jake Henderson is unique. His genetic profile shows markers that exist in only 0.001% of your population. Combined with his understanding of realm culture, he is the only suitable candidate." Jake stepped forward. "Kira, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just a translator. I don't have any special abilities. I was not Rang. Jake stepped forward. I was not Rang. Jake stepped forward. You are wrong, Kira said. You possess exactly what my species requires. I am willing to offer compensation. Technology. Resources. Knowledge beyond your current understanding. But I will have your agreement. Morrison leaned toward Jake. We need to stall her. Our defense systems aren't ready for an engagement with Vreln technology. Jake took a deep breath. This was insane. Completely insane. But people's lives were at stake. I'll meet with you, Jake said. Karen grabbed his shoulder. Jake, no. Mom. I don't have a choice, Jake said quietly. Let me talk to her. Maybe I can figure out what she really wants. Kira's expression shifted, something that might have been relief crossing her alien features. You have made a wise decision. I will transport you to my vessel within the hour. Absolutely not, Morrison said. If he's going, he goes with a security team. No, Kira said flatly. Jake Henderson only. This is not negotiable. Jake felt the weight of every eye in the command center on him. His mother's hand trembled on his shoulder. Somewhere above them, an alien with technology far beyond human capability waited for his answer. He thought about the people in hospitals, the emergency services, all the infrastructure Kira had threatened. He thought about his boring translator job and how it had somehow led to this impossible moment. I'll go alone, Jake said. The command center erupted in protests. Karen was shouting. Morrison was arguing. But Jake kept his eyes on Kira's face on the monitor. 1 hour, Kira said. Do not disappoint me, Jake Henderson. The screen went dark. Jake stood in the transport bay of Central Command, staring at the teleportation pad that would send him to Kira's vessel. His mother stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. This is wrong, Karen said. We don't know what she'll do to you up there. I know, Jake replied, but I have to try. You're my only son, Karen whispered. If something happens to you, I'll never forgive myself for letting you go. Jake hugged his mother tightly. I'll be okay. I'm good with languages. Remember? I'll figure out what she really wants. Morrison approached them, her expression grim. We've equipped you with a communication device. It's disguised as a watch. If anything goes wrong, press the crown 3 times. We'll attempt an extraction, though I can't promise it'll work against Vreln technology. Jake nodded, strapping the watch onto his wrist. His hands were shaking. The teleportation system is ready. A technician called out. Jake stepped onto the pad. The room around him began to shimmer and fade. The last thing he saw was his mother's terrified face. Then the universe twisted, and Jake Henderson disappeared from Earth. Jake materialized in a chamber that defied human architectural logic. The walls curved in impossible angles, glowing with soft, bioluminescent light. The air tasted different, processed through alien filtration systems. Kira stood before him, no longer just an image on a screen. In person, she was smaller than Jake had expected, barely reaching his shoulder. But her presence filled the space with undeniable authority. Welcome to my vessel, Kira said. Her voice no longer needed translation software. She spoke perfect English, with only a slight, melodic accent. You speak English, Jake said, surprised. I have studied your language extensively, Kira replied. I have studied everything about you, Jake Henderson. Your education, your work, your preferences. I know you better than you know yourself. The statement sent chills down Jake's spine. That's disturbing. To you, perhaps, Kira said. To my people, it is necessary. We do not enter into breeding contracts lightly. Every aspect must be evaluated. About that, Jake said carefully. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Humans and Vreln can't reproduce together. Our biology is completely different. Kira's head tilted in a gesture that seemed almost amused. You assume I am speaking of biological reproduction. Your translation systems failed to capture the nuance of my request. Jake felt a flicker of hope. So, you don't want to breed with me? Ah, not in the way your primitive understanding suggests, Kira said. The Vreln concept of breeding encompasses knowledge transfer, genetic data sharing, and cultural integration. When I say I wish to breed with you, I am requesting a partnership that will combine our species' strengths. Why didn't you just say that? Jake asked, frustration creeping into his voice. I did, Kira replied. Your translation software reduced my complex request into crude biological terms. This is why I required you, specifically. You understand nuance. You comprehend context. You are a translator who sees beyond words. Jake ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this information. So you don't want my genetic material? I want your linguistic expertise. Kira corrected. My species is dying because we cannot communicate effectively with other civilizations. We are precise, logical, direct, but the galaxy requires diplomacy, subtlety, interpretation. Skills your species possesses naturally. Skills you have refined through your work. You threaten to destroy Earth's infrastructure because you want a translator? Jake said incredulously. I threatened nothing. Kira said firmly. I stated facts. If our species cannot learn to communicate effectively, we will be forced to take defensive actions that may harm other civilizations. I require your help to prevent this outcome. Jake stared at her. Your entire threatening message was a communication failure? Massacre. Massacre. You can massacre. Massacre. Yes. Kira said simply. This is precisely why I need you. My now. A laugh bubbled up from Jake's chest, surprising him. This whole situation was absurd. The military had mobilized. His mother was having a breakdown. And all because of a bad translation. Why didn't you just ask nicely? Jake said. Kira's expression shifted again. Something that might have been confusion. I believed I was being polite. I offered compensation. I expressed the urgency of my need. What component of my message was not nice? Jake pinched the bridge of his nose. The part where you demanded genetic compatibility and threatened infrastructure. Those were statements of fact, not demands or threats. Kira insisted. This was going to be harder than Jake had thought. Kira, on Earth, when you say you want to breed with someone, it has very specific romantic and biological implications. And when you say you'll destroy infrastructure, we interpret that as a threat of violence. Kira's large eyes widened. I have caused significant cultural offense. You've terrified my mother and mobilized an entire military, Jake said. This was not my intention, Kira said. And for the first time, she sounded uncertain. I have studied your culture for years. I believed I understood, but I have failed. Jake took a deep breath. This was familiar territory. Misunderstandings happened all the time in translation work. The scale was just much larger than usual. Okay, Jake said. Let's start over. What exactly do you need from me? No, Kira gestured. And a holographic display appeared between them. It showed star charts, diplomatic routes, and what looked like failed negotiations, marked in red. My people are masters of technology, Kira explained. But we fail at diplomacy. We offend allies. We create enemies through poor communication. Our species is being isolated because we cannot express our intentions in ways other species understand. And you think I can help with that? Jake asked. I know you can, Kira said. I have read every translation you have ever produced. You do not simply convert words. You bridge cultures. You explain context. You make understanding possible where it should not be. Jake studied the holographic display. The failed negotiations covered dozens of star systems. The Vreln had tried to establish trade agreements, defensive pacts, cultural exchanges. All had collapsed due to communication failures. This is more than a translation job, Jake said slowly. You need someone to teach your entire species how to communicate across cultures. Yes, Kira said. And I am willing to offer anything you require in exchange. Technology that could advance Earth by centuries. Medical knowledge that could end disease. Resources beyond measure. And if I refuse? Jake asked. Kira's expression became sad. Then my species will continue to fail. We will become more isolated. Eventually, we will be forced to defend ourselves against civilizations that see us as hostile due to our communication failures. Many will die, possibly including humans. Jake felt the weight of that statement. This wasn't just about helping the Vreln. It was about preventing future conflicts. I need to talk to my mother, Jake said. And my government. This isn't a decision I can make alone. I understand, Kira said. But please understand my urgency. Every day we wait, the situation becomes more dangerous. Jake activated the communication device on his wrist. Morrison, can you hear me? The general's voice crackled through. Henderson, what's your status? I'm fine, Jake said. And we need to talk. This whole situation is not what we thought. Jake materialized back in the transport bay at Central Command. His mother rushed forward and grabbed him in a fierce embrace. Thank God you're alive, Karen said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. I'm fine, Mom, Jake said. Actually, I'm better than fine. We've all been misunderstanding what's happening here. Morrison approached them, flanked by military advisors and linguists. Explain. Jake spent the next hour detailing his conversation with Kira. He explained the translation failures, the cultural misunderstandings, and the actual nature of the Vreln request. The room listened in stunned silence. So she doesn't want to breed with you, Morrison said slowly. She wants you to teach her species how to communicate. Essentially, yes. Jake confirmed. Though in Vreln culture, knowledge transfer is a form of breeding. Their language combines concepts we keep separate. One of the linguists leaned forward. This explains so much about our previous failures with the Vreln. We've been interpreting their communications through our cultural lens. This Vreln. Exactly, Jake said. And they've been doing the same with us. It's a cascade of misunderstanding. Karen had been quiet during the explanation. I don't know, Jake admitted. Kira needs someone to work with her people directly. That probably means spending time on Vreln worlds. How much time? Karen asked. Jake didn't have an answer. He looked at Morrison. What do you think? Morrison was quiet for a moment, considering. This could be an unprecedented opportunity. If you can help the Vreln communicate effectively, you'd be preventing future conflicts and opening doors for Earth. But it's also risky. We'd be trusting an alien species with one of our citizens. They're offering incredible compensation. One of the advisors pointed out. Technology, medical advances, resources. This could change everything for humanity. Or it could be a trap, another advisor countered. Jake felt torn. Part of him wanted to refuse, to go back to his normal life. But another part recognized the opportunity here. This was bigger than him. Mom, Jake said quietly. Karen's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. I think you already know what you're going to do. You've always been the person who helps others understand each other. This is just a bigger stage. I'd be gone for months, Jake said. I know, Karen said, and I hate it. But I also know my son. You can't walk away from this. Jake hugged his mother again, grateful for her understanding. Then he turned to Morrison. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them, Morrison said. I want regular communication with Earth. I want the option to return if the situation becomes dangerous. And I want Earth to have a say in how the Vreln use any knowledge I help them acquire. Morrison nodded. We can negotiate those terms. I'll set up a meeting with the Global Council. Over the next 3 days, Jake found himself at the center of intense negotiations. Representatives from every major Earth government wanted input. Scientists wanted to understand the technology the Vreln were offering. Military advisors wanted security guarantees. Kira participated in the negotiations remotely, and Jake served as the primary translator and cultural mediator. It was exhausting work, but also exhilarating. For the first time, Jake saw the real impact his translation skills could have. On the fourth day, they reached an agreement. Jake would spend 6 months working with the Vreln, teaching communication strategies and helping them understand alien cultures. In exchange, the Vreln would share medical technology that could cure several major diseases and provide resources to help Earth expand into space. Jake stood in his childhood home, packing a bag for his journey. His mother sat on his bed, watching him. "I still can't believe my son is leaving to teach aliens how to talk," Karen said. "Neither can I," Jake admitted. "A week ago, I was just translating documents. You were never just anything," Karen said firmly. "You've always had a gift for understanding people. Now, you're using it to help entire civilizations." Jake zipped up his bag and sat beside his mother. "I'm scared." "Good," Karen said. "Fear means you understand the stakes. Just promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," Jake said. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Karen pulled something from her pocket. It was a small photo album. "Take this," she said. "Pictures of home, so you don't forget where you come from." Jake accepted the album, his throat tight. "Thanks, Mom." "And Jake," Karen added, "make them understand that threatening someone's mother is never a good opening move." Jake laughed, despite himself. "I'll add that to the curriculum." The next morning, Jake stood in the transport bay again. This time, a crowd had gathered. Morrison was there, along with government officials, scientists, and reporters. Someone had leaked the story, and now the whole world knew about Jake's mission. Karen stood beside him, holding his hand tightly. "You've got this," she whispered. "I hope so," Jake replied. Kira's voice came through the communication system. "Jake Henderson, are you ready?" Jake took a deep breath and stepped onto the teleportation pad. "Ready. Then welcome to your new purpose," Kira said. "Together, we will teach my people to understand the galaxy." The universe twisted. Jake caught one last glimpse of his mother's proud, tearful face. Then he was gone, transported to a Vreln vessel, beginning a journey that would change both humanity and the Vreln forever. Jake materialized in a massive chamber filled with Vreln. Hundreds of them stood in precise rows, their iridescent skin creating a sea of shifting colors. They all turned to look at him simultaneously, their large eyes unblinking. "Don't freak out," Jake muttered to himself. "This is fine. Everything is fine." Kira stood at the front of the chamber. She gestured for Jake to join her. "Jake Henderson, meet the Vreln Diplomatic Corps. These are the individuals who will learn from you." Jake walked forward, acutely aware of every eye tracking his movement. He'd done presentations before, but never to an audience of aliens who could accidentally start wars with poor word choices. "Hello," Jake said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "I'm Jake Henderson. I'm here to help you communicate more effectively with other species." The Vreln remained silent, watching him with disconcerting intensity. "They are recording everything," Kira explained. "They will review your words and body language later. This is how we learn." "Right," Jake said. "Okay then. Let's start with the basics. Communication isn't just about words. It's about context, tone, and cultural understanding." Jake spent the next several hours delivering what felt like the most important presentation of his life. He explained how different cultures interpret the same words differently. He detailed the importance of emotional intelligence in diplomacy. He gave examples of human communication failures and how they'd been resolved. The Vreln listened with perfect attention. They didn't fidget, didn't whisper to each other, didn't check devices. It was both impressive and slightly unnerving. When Jake finally finished, His throat was dry, and his legs ached from standing. Kira approached him with what might have been approval in her expression. "You have given them much to consider," she said. "But now comes the difficult part. You must show them how to apply these concepts." "How do we do that?" Jake asked. Kira gestured, and the holographic display appeared again. "We have a diplomatic crisis occurring on the planet Theta 9. The Vrelm delegation there has offended the native population through poor communication. Relations are deteriorating rapidly. You will help them repair the situation." Jake felt his heart rate spike. "You want me to handle an active diplomatic crisis? Right now?" Jake felt. "Yes," Kira said simply. "Theory is useful. Practice is essential." "I've been here for 6 hours," Jake protested. "I barely know anything about your species or the situation on Theta 9. "Then we begin your education," Kira said. "Time is not a luxury we possess." Over the next 2 weeks, Jake underwent the most intensive learning experience of his life. The Vrelm uploaded information directly into his brain through neural interface technology. He absorbed languages, cultural databases, diplomatic histories, and psychological profiles faster than should have been possible. It was overwhelming. Jake's head ached constantly as his brain processed the influx of data. But gradually, he began to understand the depth of the problem the Vrelm faced. They weren't intentionally offensive or aggressive. They were simply too logical, too direct, too precise. They stated facts without considering emotional impact. They made requests without softening language. They offered solutions without acknowledging feelings. In Vrelm culture, this was efficient communication. To every other species in the galaxy, it was rude at best and hostile at worst. "You need to learn empathy," Jake told the diplomatic corps during one training session. "Not just intellectual understanding of emotions, but genuine consideration for how others feel." A Vrelm named Zek raised a hand. "Emotions are inefficient. They cloud judgment and impede progress." "Maybe," Jake said. "But they're also what makes communication work. People don't just want information. They want to be heard, understood, and respected." "This seems unnecessarily complex," another Vrelm said. "Welcome to the galaxy," Jake replied. "Complexity is part of the package." Finally, after 3 weeks of intensive training, Kira decided Jake was ready. They would travel to Theta 9 and attempt to repair the diplomatic crisis. Jake stood in the transport bay of the Vrelm vessel, preparing for teleportation. He wore a translator device that would help him communicate with the Theta 9 natives. He carried diplomatic credentials that granted him authority to negotiate on behalf of both Earth and the Vrelm. "Nervous?" Kira asked. "Terrified," Jake admitted. "What if I make things worse? Then we will learn from the failure," Kira said. "This is how progress occurs." Jake appreciated her pragmatism, even if it didn't help his nerves. He activated the communication device to contact Earth. His mother answered immediately. "Jake, how are you holding up? I'm about to negotiate a diplomatic crisis between aliens," Jake said. "So I've been better." Karen's laugh came through the device. "That's my son, always jumping into the deep end." "I wish I felt more prepared," Jake confessed. "You've been preparing your whole life," Karen said. "Every conversation you've ever translated, every cultural misunderstanding you've helped resolve. This is just bigger. Way bigger," Jake said. "You'll figure it out," Karen said with absolute confidence. "And I'll be here when you get back." The conversation ended, and Jake felt marginally better. Then the universe twisted again, and he was standing on Theta 9. The planet was beautiful. Twin suns hung in a purple sky, casting strange shadows across alien architecture. The buildings were organic-looking, grown rather than constructed, with flowing curves and bioluminescent details. The Vrelm delegation stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. The Theta 9 natives surrounded them, their body language aggressive. The natives were insectoid, with chitinous exoskeletons that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Jake Henderson, Kira said through his translator device. This is Ambassador Trell of the Theta 9 Collective. The situation is volatile. One of the Theta 9 natives stepped forward. Its translator rendered its clicking speech into English. You are human. Why does a human speak for the realm? I'm a cultural mediator, Jake said carefully. I'm here to help everyone understand each other. The Vreln understand nothing. Trell said, its mandibles clacking in agitation. They insult our traditions. They dismiss our concerns. They treat us like primitive creatures. Jake turned to the Vreln delegation. What happened? The lead Vreln, a female named Sora, spoke in her precise way. We offered technological solutions to their infrastructure problems. They became hostile. How did you offer these solutions? Jake asked. We identified 17 critical failures in their systems. Sora said. We provided detailed analysis of their inefficiencies. We explained how our technology could correct their mistakes. Jake closed his eyes. Of course. The Vreln had basically told the Theta 9 natives that everything they'd built was wrong and needed to be fixed. From the Vreln perspective, this was helpful. From anyone else's perspective, it was incredibly insulting. Ambassador Trell, Jake said. May I speak with you privately? Trell's antennae twitched. Why? Because I think there's been a misunderstanding, and I'd like to explain it without an audience. Trell considered this, then gestured with a multi-jointed limb. Follow. They moved away from the crowd to a quieter area. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to do what he did best. The Vreln didn't mean to insult you, Jake said. In their culture, direct identification of problems is considered helpful. They don't understand that other species need diplomatic softening. They called our work failures, Trell said. They identified areas for improvement, Jake corrected gently. I know it sounds the same, but to them, there's a difference. They genuinely want to help. They're just incredibly bad at expressing it politely. Trell's antennae quivered. You admit the Vreln are diplomatically incompetent? Absolutely, Jake said. That's why I'm here. They know they have a problem. They're trying to fix it. But change takes time. Why should we be patient with them? Trell asked. Because the technology they're offering could genuinely help your people, Jake said. And because teaching them better communication benefits everyone. The galaxy needs species that can talk to each other. Trell was quiet for a long moment. Then it said, What do you suggest? Let me work with both sides, Jake said. I'll help the Vreln understand why their approach upset you, and I'll help your people understand their intentions. We can rebuild this relationship. We can rebuild this relationship. We can rebuild this relationship. And if the Vreln refuse to change? Trell asked. Then I'll tell them to leave, Jake said honestly. My job is to help communication work. If one side won't cooperate, there's no point. Trell's body language shifted slightly. Jake's translator provided context. The gesture indicated cautious agreement. You have 1 week, Trell said. Make the Vreln understand respect, or they leave our world. Jake returned to the Vreln delegation and immediately began what would be the most challenging week of his life. He met with the Theta 9 leadership, learning their cultural values and concerns. He worked with the Vreln, teaching them how to express their ideas without causing offense. It was exhausting work. The Vreln struggled to understand why factual statements needed emotional context. The Theta 9 natives were suspicious of Vreln intentions. Jake found himself constantly mediating, translating not just words but entire worldviews. On the 4th day, there was a breakthrough. Sora, the Vreln delegation leader, asked Jake a question. When you explain things to your mother, how do you phrase critical information? Jake thought about it. I start with something positive. Then I present the problem gently. Then I explain solutions as options rather than corrections. Dawn. This seems inefficient, Sora said. It takes longer to convey the same information, but it preserves the relationship, Jake explained. And relationships are the foundation of cooperation. Without trust, even the best solution will be rejected. Something shifted in Sora's expression. I am beginning to understand. Communication is not just about data transfer. It is about relationship maintenance. Exactly, Jake said, feeling hopeful for the first time all week. The next day, the Vreln delegation requested a formal meeting with the Theta 9 leadership. Jake attended as mediator, nervous about what would happen. Sora stood before Ambassador Trell and spoke in her careful way. But this time, her words were different. We apologize for our previous approach. We failed to show proper respect for your achievements. Your civilization has built something remarkable. We believe we can offer tools that might complement your existing systems, if you are interested in exploring that possibility. The room was silent. Jake held his breath. Trell's antennae moved in a pattern Jake's translator identified as pleased surprise. That is acceptable. We will discuss your proposals. Jake felt tension drain from his shoulders. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was progress. Over the next 3 days, Jake helped facilitate discussions between the Vreln and Theta 9 representatives. The talks were still sometimes awkward, but genuine communication was happening. The Theta 9 began to see the Vreln as awkward but well-meaning. The Vreln began to understand the importance of diplomatic protocol. On the final day, Trell approached Jake privately. You have done good work here. Human. The Vreln are still strange, but they are trying. That is enough. Thank you, Jake said. I hope this is the beginning of a good relationship between your peoples. Perhaps, Trell said. We shall see. But Jake Henderson, remember this. Communication is power. Use yours wisely. Jake returned to the Vreln vessel with Kira and the diplomatic corps. The mood was cautiously optimistic. They had averted a crisis and established a foundation for future cooperation. You have taught us much, Kira said to Jake. But there is still more to learn. Always is, Jake agreed. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of diplomatic missions, training sessions, and cultural exchanges. Jake worked with Vreln delegations across a dozen worlds. He helped them navigate complex negotiations, avoid cultural pitfalls, and build genuine relationships with alien species. It wasn't always successful. Some missions failed despite Jake's best efforts. But even failures provided learning opportunities. The Vreln were beginning to understand the complexities of galactic diplomacy. Jake also maintained regular contact with Earth. His mother called every few days, eager for stories about his adventures. Morrison provided updates on how the Vreln technology was being implemented on Earth. The medical advances alone were saving thousands of lives. On one video call, Karen looked particularly excited. Jake, you're famous. They're calling you the ambassador of understanding. There are news stories about you everywhere. I'm just doing my job, Jake said, embarrassed. You're doing more than that, Karen said. You're changing how species interact. That's incredible. Jake thought about the work he'd been doing. His mother was right. In a way, he wasn't just translating words anymore. He was helping build bridges between entirely different ways of thinking. I miss home, Jake admitted. But this work matters. I know, Karen said softly. And I'm so proud of you. But I also can't wait for you to come back. 2 more months, Jake said. Then I'll be home for a while. But fate had other plans. Jake was working with a Vreln delegation on the planet Meridian 5 when the emergency call came through. Kira's voice was urgent, lacking her usual calm precision. Jake Henderson. We have a critical situation. The Collective Council is meeting to discuss the Vreln. There is talk of sanctions, possibly quarantine. Our diplomatic failures have accumulated. Without intervention, the Vreln may be isolated from the galaxy. Jake felt his heart sink. What happened? Multiple incidents across several systems, Kira said. Our delegations have caused offense, despite training. The other species see us as hopelessly incompetent. They question whether the Vrelm can ever integrate into galactic society. That's not fair. Jake protested. You've made so much progress. Progress is not sufficient, Kira said. Perfection is required, and we cannot achieve that. Nobody's perfect, Jake said. Every species makes diplomatic mistakes, but we make them more frequently, Kira said. The Collective Council sees us as a liability. They are discussing our removal from all diplomatic channels. Jake's mind raced. If the Vrelm were isolated, all his work would be for nothing. Worse, it would push them toward the defensive isolation that Kira had warned about initially. When is the council meeting? Jake asked. In 3 days, Kira said. They are convening on the neutral station Harmony Point. Then we need to be there, Jake said. You are human, Kira said. The council may not grant you authority to speak. Then we make them listen, Jake said firmly. The Vrelm deserve a chance to explain their position, and I'm going to make sure they get it. Jake contacted Morrison at Central Command. I need Earth's support. The Vrelm are facing isolation. I need diplomatic credentials to speak at the Collective Council. Morrison was skeptical. That's a big ask, Henderson. You're one person. The Council represents hundreds of species. The Vrelm have honored their agreement with Earth, Jake argued. They've provided technology and resources. We owe them support. I'll talk to the Global Council, Morrison said. But I can't promise anything. 24 hours later, Jake received official diplomatic credentials from Earth. He was now Ambassador Jake Henderson, authorized to speak on behalf of both humanity and the Vrelm at the Collective Council. The journey to Harmony Point took 2 days. Jake spent the time preparing his speech, reviewing diplomatic protocols, and trying to control his nerves. This was far beyond anything he'd trained for. He'd be speaking to representatives of hundreds of advanced civilizations. His mother called the night before the council meeting. Jake, I saw the news. They're saying you're going to address the entire Collective Council. Yeah, Jake said. You can do this, Karen said with absolute certainty. You've spent your whole life helping people understand each other. This is just a really big conversation. What if I mess up? Jake asked. What if I make things worse? Then you'll figure out how to fix it, Karen said. That's what you do. You're a bridge builder, Jake. And the galaxy needs bridges right now. Jake felt tears prickling his eyes. Thanks, Mom. Go show them what humans can do, Karen said. Make me proud. I'll try, Jake promised. Harmony Point was a massive space station that existed in neutral territory between star systems. It was designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of different species, with sections tailored to various environmental needs. Number 4. End quote. Number 4. Jake arrived with Kira and a small Vrelm delegation. They were escorted to a waiting area outside the main council chamber. Through the transparent walls, Jake could see representatives from dozens of species arriving. Are you prepared? Kira asked. As prepared as I'll ever be, Jake said. Jake Henderson, Kira said. And her voice held an emotion he'd never heard before. Whatever happens, know that you have given my people something precious. Hope. You showed us that change is possible. The fight isn't over, Jake said. We're going to win this. A chime sounded, indicating the council was ready to convene. Jake took a deep breath and walked into the chamber. The council chamber was enormous, with seating arranged in concentric circles rising toward a domed ceiling. Hundreds of delegates filled the space, representing the vast diversity of galactic civilization. At the center was a speaking platform where representatives could address the assembly. Jake walked to the platform, acutely aware of every eye, stalk, and sensor focused on him. He was a human, a species that had only joined the galactic community a few decades ago. He was about to defend the Vrelm, one of the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy. The council moderator, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, spoke in a voice that translated simultaneously into hundreds of languages. The human Jake Henderson has requested to speak regarding the Vreln situation. This is highly irregular. Does the council grant permission? There was murmuring throughout the chamber. Then a delegate from the Theta 9 collective stood. I grant permission, Ambassador Trell said. Jake Henderson has proven himself a capable mediator. Other voices joined in agreement. Finally, the moderator spoke again. Permission granted. Jake Henderson, you have 30 minutes to address the council. Jake stepped to the center of the platform. His voice would be translated by the station's systems, reaching every delegate simultaneously. Members of the collective council, Jake began. I stand before you as a representative of humanity and as someone who has spent the last 4 months working closely with the Vreln. I'm here to ask you to reconsider the proposed isolation of the Vreln species. The Vreln have repeatedly demonstrated diplomatic incompetence, a delegate interrupted. They offend allies, create misunderstandings, and threaten stability. Why should we not isolate them? Because isolation is exactly the wrong solution, Jake said. The Vreln aren't malicious. They're not deliberately offensive. They're simply different. Their cognitive and cultural framework emphasizes precision and directness in ways that clash with how most species communicate. That difference causes problems, another delegate said. Yes, Jake acknowledged. But differences always cause problems initially. That's what diplomacy is for. To bridge those gaps. The Vreln have had centuries to learn proper diplomatic protocol. They've failed because they've been trying to learn alone, Jake said. They've been studying diplomatic protocols like they were scientific formulas. But communication isn't science. It's art. It requires guidance, practice, and patience. Jake pulled up holographic displays showing the work he'd done with the Vreln over the past months. He showed the progression from the initial crisis on Theta 9 to the successful negotiations that followed. In 4 months, the Vreln have made more progress in diplomatic relations than they have in decades, Jake said. Not because they suddenly became smarter, but because someone finally taught them how to translate their precise, logical communication style into language other species could understand. You are one person, the moderator said. You cannot train the entire Vreln diplomatic corps. I don't have to, Jake said. I've trained their trainers. The Vreln are quick learners. They just needed someone to show them what they were missing. And here's the crucial point. The galaxy needs what the Vreln offer. Jake expanded the holographic display to show the technology and resources the Vreln had shared with Earth. Medical advances that are saving thousands of lives. Energy systems that are reducing pollution. Construction techniques that are making space travel safer. The Vreln have incredible value to offer the galaxy, but only if we're willing to work with them. And if they continue to cause diplomatic incidents, a delegate challenged, then we address them as they happen, Jake said. The same way we address incidents from any species. Nobody's perfect. Every civilization makes mistakes. The question is whether we're willing to help each other improve, or whether we're going to give up at the first sign of difficulty. The chamber was quiet. Jake could feel the weight of hundreds of perspectives considering his words. I've worked with the Vreln, Jake continued. I've seen them struggle to understand concepts that come naturally to other species. But I've also seen them succeed. I've watched them build genuine connections with alien cultures. I've seen them laugh at their own mistakes and genuinely celebrate when they get communication right. The Vreln are not a threat to the galaxy. They're an awkward, brilliant species trying their best to fit into a social system they don't naturally understand. And if we give up on them now, we're not just punishing them. We're punishing ourselves by losing access to everything they have to offer. Jake took a breath and delivered his final argument. Humanity is a young species in this galaxy. We've only been here for a few decades, but in that time, we've learned something important. Diversity makes us stronger. Different perspectives, different approaches, different ways of thinking. That's what creates innovation and progress. The Vreln think differently than most species. That's not a weakness. It's a strength. Their unique perspective has produced technology that benefits everyone. Their precision and logic solve problems others miss. Yes, they need help with diplomacy. But every species needs help with something. So I'm asking this council. Don't isolate the Vreln. Partner with them. Assign cultural liaisons to their delegations. Provide training and support. Give them the tools they need to succeed. Because when they succeed, we all benefit. Jake stepped back from the center of the platform. His heart was pounding, his hands trembling. He'd said everything he could. Now it was up to the council. The moderator spoke. The council will deliberate. Jake Henderson, please return to the waiting area. Jake left the chamber with Kira and the Vreln delegation. They sat in tense silence, waiting for the council's decision. Hours passed. Jake contacted his mother, needing to hear a familiar voice. How did it go? Karen asked immediately. I don't know, Jake admitted. I said everything I could. Now we wait. Whatever happens, you tried, Karen said. That's what matters. It won't matter if the council votes for isolation, Jake said. Even if they do, you changed things, Karen insisted. The Vreln have made progress. That doesn't go away. Regardless of what the council decides, Jake wanted to believe that. But the weight of potential failure pressed down on him. Finally, a chime sounded. The council had reached a decision. Jake and the Vreln delegation returned to the chamber. The moderator's voice filled the space. The collective council has voted on the Vreln situation. By a margin of 68%. The council has decided against isolation. Jake felt relief flood through him. Beside him, Kira made a sound that might have been a sob. However, the moderator continued. The council imposes conditions. The Vreln will be assigned cultural liaison officers from various species who will work with their diplomatic corps. The Vreln will undergo mandatory cultural training, and progress will be reviewed annually. Additionally, the moderator said, the council recognizes the work of Jake Henderson. His approach to bridging cultural differences has proven effective. The council extends an invitation. Jake Henderson may serve as a permanent cultural advisor to the collective council, if he chooses. Jake stood there, stunned. He'd expected to argue for the Vreln. He hadn't expected a job offer. You don't have to answer now, the moderator said. But know that your skills are valued. Jake Henderson. The galaxy needs bridge builders. The session ended, and delegates began to disperse. Several approached Jake, congratulating him on his speech, or asking questions about his work with the Vreln. Kira stood beside him, her large eyes bright with emotion. You have saved my species from isolation. I do not have words sufficient to express gratitude. You don't need fancy words, Jake said with a smile. A simple thank you works fine. Thank you, Kira said. For everything. Jake spent the next week at Harmony Point, meeting with council representatives and discussing the implementation of the new Vreln support program. It was exciting work, but also exhausting. He missed Earth. He missed his mother. He missed his normal life. On the 7th day, Jake made his decision. He contacted the council moderator. I'm honored by the offer to serve as a cultural advisor, Jake said. But I need to decline, at least for now. I have commitments to Earth and to my family. Maybe in the future. When I'm ready. That is understandable, the moderator said. The offer remains open, should you change your mind. Jake also spoke with Kira. My contract with the Vreln is almost up. It's time for me to go home. I understand, Kira said. Though my people will miss your guidance. You don't need me anymore, Jake said. You have the tools. You have the training. You just need practice. Will you return? Kira asked. Maybe, Jake said honestly. But not for a while. I need to reconnect with my own culture before I can help bridge others. Jake's final journey took him back to Earth, back to Central Command. back to his mother's embrace. "Welcome home," Karen said, holding him tightly. "It's good to be back," Jake said. The debriefing with Morrison and the Global Council took 3 days. Jake provided detailed reports on everything he'd learned about the Vreln, the Collective Council, and galactic diplomacy. "So what's next for you?" Morrison asked at the end of the final session. "Honestly," Jake said, "I have no idea. A few months ago, I was just a translator. Now, I'm apparently some kind of galactic diplomat." "You're good at it," Morrison said. "Earth could use someone with your skills." "I know," Jake said. "But I need time to process everything that's happened. I went from translating documents to negotiating with alien councils. That's a lot of change." "And to do," Morrison nodded. "Take the time you need. When you're ready, we'll have work for you." Jake spent the next 2 months readjusting to life on Earth. He moved back into his childhood home temporarily, enjoying simple things like home-cooked meals and sleeping in his own bed. He avoided media attention as much as possible, though that was difficult given his newfound fame. His mother fussed over him constantly, making sure he was eating properly and getting enough rest. Jake found it both annoying and comforting. "You know I'm 24, right?" Jake said one evening as Karen brought him a third helping of dinner. "You're my son," Karen replied. "Age is irrelevant." Jake laughed. "Fair enough." One evening, Jake's communication device chimed. It was a message from Kira. "Jake Henderson, I wanted to update you on our progress. The Vreln Diplomatic Corps has successfully completed negotiations with 3 new species. We have had no major incidents in the past month. Your teachings continue to guide us." Jake smiled as he read the message. He typed a response. "That's wonderful news, Kira. Keep up the good work. Remember, communication is a skill that requires constant practice." "You're doing great." Kira's response came quickly. "We will continue to improve." And Jake Henderson, if you ever wish to return, you will always be welcome among the Vreln. "Thank you," Jake typed. "I'll keep that in mind." Jake set the device aside and looked out the window at the Earth sky. Somewhere up there, the Vreln were continuing their diplomatic work. The galaxy was learning to understand them. And they were learning to understand the galaxy, and Jake had helped make that possible. A week later, Morrison contacted Jake with an offer. Earth was establishing a new department of xenocultural affairs. They wanted Jake to head it. It would be based here on Earth, Morrison explained. You'd train humans in alien diplomacy and work with the various alien delegations that visit our planet. Less travel, more stability. Jake considered the offer. It was tempting. He'd be using his skills, helping build bridges, but staying close to home. "Can I think about it?" Jake asked. "Take your time," Morrison said. Jake discussed the offer with his mother over dinner. "What do you want to do?" Karen asked. "I'm not sure," Jake admitted. "Part of me wants to accept. It's important work. But another part of me wonders if I'm ready to commit to this path permanently." "You're allowed to take time to figure out your life," Karen said. "You've done incredible things. But you don't have to keep doing incredible things every day. Sometimes, it's okay to just be Jake Henderson, translator." Jake smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise," Karen said. "You just noticed." Jake spent another week thinking. He walked around his old neighborhood, visited with friends, reconnected with his pre-adventure life. It felt both familiar and strange, like putting on clothes that no longer quite fit. Finally, Jake made his decision. He called Morrison. "I'll take the job," Jake said. "But with some conditions. I want to work reasonable hours. I want time for personal life. And I want the flexibility to say no to projects that don't feel right." "That's all acceptable," Morrison said. "When can you start?" "Next month," Jake said. "I need a little more time to get my life organized." "Understood," Morrison said. "Welcome to Xenocultural Affairs, Ambassador Henderson." Jake's first day at the new department was overwhelming in familiar ways. There were stacks of documents to review, teams to organize, protocols to establish. But there was also excitement. Jake was building something new, something that would help Earth navigate its place in the galactic community. Over the next year, Jake trained dozens of humans in xenocultural diplomacy. He worked with alien delegations visiting Earth, helping them understand human culture, and helping humans understand theirs. He published papers on translation theory and cultural mediation. He also maintained regular contact with Kira and the Vreln. They'd send updates on their diplomatic progress, occasionally asking for Jake's advice on particularly tricky situations. Life settled into a new normal. Jake had his own apartment now, close enough to visit his mother regularly but with his own space. He dated occasionally, though explaining his job to potential partners was always interesting. "So you teach aliens how to talk to humans?" Among other things, Jake would say. The work was fulfilling but also exhausting. Jake found himself missing the simplicity of his old translator job, where the stakes were lower and the problems were smaller. On the one-year anniversary of his return to Earth, Jake sat in his office reviewing reports when Morrison stopped by. "How are you holding up?" Morrison asked. "Good," Jake said. "Busy, but good. I wanted to let you know," Morrison said. "The Collective Council has requested your presence at their annual summit. They want you to present on best practices for cultural integration." Jake felt a flutter of nerves. "When?" 3 months from now," Morrison said. "It's optional." Jake thought about it. A year ago, he would have been terrified. Now, the idea was merely intimidating rather than overwhelming. "I'll do it," Jake said. "It'll be good to see how the Vreln are progressing." "You've come a long way," Morrison observed. From the guy who dropped his coffee mug when soldiers burst into his kitchen to someone comfortable addressing the Collective Council. "I had good teachers," Jake said, thinking of his mother, of Kira, of all the experiences that had shaped him. "And you've become a good teacher yourself," Morrison said. "Earth is lucky to have you." After Morrison left, Jake pulled up the photo album his mother had given him before his first journey to the Vreln vessel. He flipped through pictures of his childhood home, his family, his old life. So much had changed. But the core of who he was remained the same. He was still Jake Henderson, the person who helped others understand each other. The scale had just gotten bigger. Jake's communication device chimed. It was his mother. "Dinner at my place tonight? I'm making your favorite." Jake smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." He closed the photo album, filed his reports, and headed out. There would be more alien delegations tomorrow, more cultural bridges to build, more misunderstandings to resolve. But tonight, he was just Jake, going to have dinner with his mom. And that was exactly what he needed.